Alrighty, I'm going to give it a second to let everybody get in, let all the channels connect. I see we have 5 green check marks. Hopefully, I'm broadcasting to everyone, doing this correctly solo this evening. Again, I'm going to let it settle for a second, let it breathe. To quote my co host who's not here with me, leaving me alone this evening. Good evening, Broncos country, and welcome back to another tremendous installment, I believe, of the Mile High Huddle podcast. I am your host, Zack Kelberman. And again, I am flying solo tonight with Chad unavailable, and Scott is out as well. Hopefully, y'all can hear me. If you can, let me know. Waiting for all these things to connect. Alrighty, so I'm going to dive into, while I see the room filling up, I'm going to dive into the topic of the evening, which is the Broncos hiring of David Shaw as senior executive consultant. Now, before I do that, again, guys, if you can, okay, cool, KB hears me. Just want to make sure I'm connecting to everybody. Give me 1 second just to make sure. Doing this on the fly with no producers, always a fun task. Just want to make sure really quickly. All right, so I'm going to just dive into the topic of the evening. Hopefully, you guys can catch up with me. The Broncos did hire David Shaw today, the former Stanford head coach, as the senior personnel executive working alongside George Paton in the Broncos front office. I think this is a tremendous move for the Broncos. I think this was a tremendous get for Denver, someone that had a much larger capacity in a different, obviously a different landscape in college. And now he didn't take another head coaching job, even though he interviewed for several, including the Broncos head coaching job that went to Sean Payton. They're getting him as a front office man while he dips his toes back in the NFL waters and figures out what he wants to do in his future. And you could say what you want about David Shaw as a head coach, or if the Broncos should have hired him, but there is no doubting his influence, especially with quarterbacks and the players that he sent from the collegiate game to the NFL. Andrew Luck being the most notable of them. I appreciate you, KB82, also making sure Facebook's good. Again, guys, if you can hear me, let me know. It's a little lower of a viewer count this evening. Maybe it's, chalking it up to a Thursday. I don't know. It's making sure we're connecting and everything's working good. But we have a lot to talk about with David Shaw. Those are my initial thoughts. I have obviously more to get into today. I want to take care of some of the supers while I can. David McElrath always hopping in the Papa Bear. Early $5 super. Good evening, David. Thank you. Good evening, Broncos country. Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. It's actually just me tonight. Scott and Chad are solo. Hashtag 12 and 5. Hashtag Buckham times 3. MHH for life. Denver Broncos for life. Bonos. Knicks for 6. And welcome, Coach David Shaw. Not a hashtag, David, but I do like the sentiment the same. Big get for Denver again, and I think he's going to help at least the scouting department, George Paton, take some off his plate and further identify players, both in the professional ranks and the college ranks, that can help the Broncos. We also have Sam Bam, $10 super. So good to see you, Sam. Thank you for the contribution, as always. Sam says, evening, Zach Solo. So what do you think the purpose of the Shaw hire is? Go Broncos. The purpose is what I just said, Sam. To work alongside George Paton in the front office. You can throw on the tinfoil hat and get the conspiracy theories out and maybe connect the dots to say, well, there's a built-in replacement for George Paton now if Sean wants to move on. I don't think I'm ready to go that far. They have had their eye on David Shaw for a bit. Obviously, they interviewed him. David Shaw's had his eye on the Broncos and getting back into the NFL. So I think I'm taking it as face value. They hired him to help, again, scout players in college and the NFL and just help build up the roster. Any other additional input they can get would be a bonus. And if you talk about Sam and everybody else, the support system, I put this out there on Twitter earlier, the support system now that Bo Nix has, at least with his coaching staff, Sean Payton, David Shaw, Pete Carmichael, Joe Lombardi as a positional coach. Then you have outside counsel from Peyton Manning and John Elway. There are few quarterbacks in NFL history that have landed in a more favorable spot as a rookie for developmental purposes. Also, Nix is throwing to his college receiver and taking snaps from his college center. So I love the dichotomy here, and I like anything the Broncos do that can help identify good talent and bring them to the Mile High City. All right, this could be a slower evening, judging by the view count. Again, I hope you guys are all listening on all the platforms. Everything's connected, and it's just a slow. I'm hoping it's just a little slow, and I didn't do anything wrong. But I'm going to say hi to some people here. Michael Ronquillo, as always. Sunrise and sunset. Good evening, Zach, on the Mile High Huddle podcast. Go Broncos. Good evening, Michael. Thank you for tuning in. Michael Room says Zach solo shows are always fun, passion exemplified. Yeah, Michael. Anybody else? I've been doing this for quite a while. Solo, going back to another outlet. I used to do Facebook Lives like 5-6 days a week. It's old hat to me. I love hopping on here solo. Love potting with Chad. Love potting with Scott. Love potting with anyone. But solo shows hit differently, and I appreciate the compliment there, Michael. Daniel Barry highlights says, "Yo, good evening, Greg, to you." Parker says it's working well. I'm happy to hear that. Again, maybe it's just a slow evening. Who knows what's really going on? We have Michaela Israel. Good evening, Broncos country. Good evening to you, Michaela. And William Catalano says, "Hey, Michaela and Coop." Well, hey to you too, William. So let's get a question here from KB82. I'm hoping all three quarterbacks kill it in the preseason to flip them for more depth on the O-line. I don't know, though. I mean, you're assuming, KB, here that of the three, you're going to trade Zach Wilson because you're not going to trade Jarrett Stidham. You didn't hand him that contract. Sean Payton did not handpick the guy to flip him for what, a 6th or 7th round pick. Ideally, you can make a little more back. You can make a profit on the Zach Wilson trade. So if he lights it up in preseason, KB, as you're saying here, maybe you get a 5th for Zach Wilson and get back better value than you gave up. That I could see happening, but it would take just like 10 touchdowns, 12 touchdowns, and no picks, just like looking like a quarterback reborn for any team to even take a flyer on Zach Wilson. So we'll see, KB. That's a good problem for the Broncos to have potentially. And I do agree with what you said about the O-line, though. And it's funny because David Shaw was asked today by Chris Thomason of the Denver Gazette because David Shaw coached Cameron Fleming in college, I believe. Might have been the pros. But Fleming's a free agent still, and just trying to make the connection if the Broncos need some help, and David Shaw vouched for him. So maybe the Broncos go there back to that well, but you're right. They can always use more depth, especially at center. I read that Connor Williams is coming back, the former Dolphins center, former Cowboys center as well. He had an ACL last season. He's healthy now. I wouldn't mind the Broncos maybe taking a sniff around him just to add some experience to that room with Alex Forsythe and Luke Wattenberg. Keith Brugman, so good to see you, Keith. Thank you for hopping in this evening. What player will be missed most? Judy, Wilson, Jewell, or Simmons? Which player will have the best season not being a Bronco? This is a really good question. And considering it's a little slow this evening, Keith, I'm going to try to take my time if I could and give my honest thoughts. I'll go one by one here. So Jerry Jeudy, I was a believer, and then I'm out on Jerry Jeudy. It's all tease and no delivery. It's blue, you know what, with Jerry Jeudy all the time. So I don't know in Cleveland with Deshaun Watson, that situation. Yeah, he didn't look great last year. He's competing for targets with Amari Cooper and Njoku, a few others. I don't know how well he's going to do, and especially living up to that ridiculous contract that he got. So I'm going to put him to the side here. Russ, by all accounts, has been winning that quarterback competition in Pittsburgh, and it's looking like he's going to be the week 1 starter and the week 2 starter against the Broncos. I don't know if you're going to miss him, though. And to answer your question about Jeudy, you have Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims. Troy Franklin, I believe, will produce more in one season than Jerry Jeudy ever did, or close to it. Wilson, you had an upgrade, too, at quarterback. Bo Nix, he's a rookie, yes. Wilson's not. Wilson won a Super Bowl, 9-time Pro Bowler, yada, yada. But there were things he couldn't do, obviously, in the Sean Payton system that are elementary. It's football 101. And those same things Bo Nix thrives with. So will the Broncos miss Russell Wilson running into sacks or turning the ball over or making Sean Payton pull his hair out or curse him out on the sideline? I don't think so. Though, of the 4, just based on volume, I can definitely see him being, having the best season because he's going to play the most of the 4 here. Simmons isn't even signed. And Jewell is he's a starter in Carolina, kind of obscure now. I don't anticipate big things. So as much As we all dislike Russell Wilson now, I do think of this list, Keith, he has the best chance to have the best season, though I don't think the Broncos will really miss anyone. Judy, again, is replaced by the players I mentioned. Russ is replaced by Bo Nix. Jewel, I'm not a Jewel guy. Maybe you are, Keith, but between Cody Barton, Griffith, you brought in Andre Smith, you can make up with 3 players the things that Jewel brought to the table. And I like Alex Singleton there in that starting role as well. Simmons, he's unsigned for a reason still. It's June 20th, and he doesn't have a contract. Says to me that maybe Broncos country overrated him just a tad bit, and I certainly did as well. I'll be upfront. Until he gets signed, it's hard to project where, what kind of season he's going to have, or the Broncos going to miss him. But I do, not to sound like a homer, one of my favorite signings of the offseason is someone no one's been talking about, and that's Brandon Jones from Miami. Is he Justin Simmons? No, definitely not. Simmons has more skin in the game. I think he's a little more just talented overall. But Brandon Jones is a rock in the run game. He's a really heady, smart player, physical, tough, and dependable. So you have Caden Stearns in that room as well. You have PJ Locke in that room. You have JL Skinner. You have DTY. It's a situation here, Keith, like with Jewel, where the sum of their parts, I say it a lot, but it's true, the sum of their parts can add up to one player. So long story short, I think Russ is going to have the best season, but I don't really see the Broncos missing any one of these players, though. We'll see what shakes out. I could be wrong. Okay, I'm going to get you all good on Twitch. Thank you for confirming that, Blue Bones. Again, maybe it's just a slow evening today. It's all good. I understand you guys have things to do, not much going on right now. I did want to hop on even solo, though, to keep you apprised of the David Shaw hire, the signing of Dondre, I think that's the pronunciation of his first name, Tillman, the former UFL 3-time champion. So I want to just hop on, and I'm glad that it's all working. Blue Bones, I'll take a Twitch question. Any reason to keep all 3 quarterbacks? Not really. And Blue Bones, I don't know if you're new here, but I'm not a Zach Wilson truther by any means. I don't understand the utility in keeping 3 quarterbacks in this day and age. I mean, if Bo Nix goes down, God forbid, your season's probably over. And then if Jarrett Stidham goes down, your season's definitely over. It doesn't matter who you have as the 3rd string. To me, and it might be controversial, you guys can disagree, that's fine. The Broncos are wasting their time with Zach Wilson. He showed you who he was in New York, except when he played the Broncos. He showed you who he was in minicamp. He threw that pick, and he's not going to show you much else in a competition with a veteran, a steady Eddie like Jarrett Stidham, and an exciting experience out of college rookie in Bo Nix, who's the odds-on favorite to start. So there isn't any reason to me to keep 3 quarterbacks, but I'm not the one making the calls. I'm not the one making $18 million a year. That's a Sean Payton decision. Roy Osborne, how's it going, Zach? It's going really well. Roy, thank you. Hope you're doing good as well. Nice to see you in all of Broncos country. You too. Thank you for hopping in. Daniel Garcia, hey, Zach, who is your final RB room for the team? That's a good question. It depends, Daniel, how many the Broncos are keeping, obviously. And do you count Michael Burton, the fullback, as a running back? I guess we would for the sake of the conversation. Michael Burton's a big Sean Payton guy. So he's probably locked into one of those spots, even though the fullback is a dying position. So I'm going to go, again, against the grain here. A lot of you think that Javonte is going to be cut. I'm going to say Javonte makes the team. You drafted Estime. He's in. McLaughlin has looked great in camp. I don't see how you leave him off. And then you gave Blake Watson, who looked good in camp too, very explosive, fairly significant guaranteed money as an undrafted free agent. So counting 4 running backs and a fullback, Burton, I'm going to say Javonte, Estime, McLaughlin, and Watson. That leaves P. Ryan on the outside looking in. And Chad and I disagree with this. Daniel, maybe you do too. I just don't see the points in keeping P. Ryan, especially at his current salary, when he pretty much does the same things as all the other running backs. If you want a power guy, you have Javonte. If you want a speed guy, which P. Ryan's not, can't pronounce his name, you have McLaughlin and Watson. If you want a running back to catch passes, all of them can do that. It's not another Phillip Lindsay situation where you guys think their hands are literally made of bricks. These guys can catch passes. Estime caught passes in college. McLaughlin caught passes as a rookie. If you want to get the ball to a running back, there's other running backs not named P. Ryan that can do it. So I think he's on the bubble, but again, we'll leave that open for conversation. Objectively biased says I preferred Rattler over Nix. I mean, hey, to each their own. It's what makes America a great country. Everyone has their own opinion and is entitled to it. I didn't. I was so freaking glad when the Broncos drafted Bo Nix. You could talk about quarterback 6. You could talk about reaching for him. But there is a massive, massive, massive fall off in talent and potential going from Bo Nix to Spencer Rattler. And if you even want to debate that, it comes down to, and it's ad nauseum, we've talked about this so much since the draft, who fit Sean Payton's system better? That is the golden question. That is all that matters. And Bo Nix fits Sean Payton's system better than Spencer Rattler. That's why Bo Nix is a Bronco and Rattler is not. All right. We got GLP, Gary Leeds Palmer, 1999 Super. So good to see you, Gary. Thank you so much as always. Thanks for soloing Zach Go Broncos. Absolutely, Gary. It's my pleasure. I have no problem with it. I love talking to y'all. And again, I didn't want to keep you guys in the darker without a show until Sunday. So here I am, and I appreciate your support, Gary. All right. Let me get some other questions. Todd Ostendorf, how many wide receivers do the Broncos keep and who? Man, I got to pull up. Hang on one second. Let me pull up the depth chart because there are so many names and I don't want to forget, because every time, like on Twitter, I'll say like Broncos depth chart includes these players, and it's always the one player that I left off that people be like, oh, what about him? So let me just pull this up really quickly. It's a lot of people here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, there's 12 receivers on the Broncos 90-man roster. So let's say the Broncos, what they keep last year? Like it was like 4 or 5, wasn't it? It was like ridiculously low. I'll say they keep more just for the sake of conversation again. I'll say they keep 6. If they keep 6, obviously Courtland Sutton, especially if they come to terms with the new contract, he's a lock. Josh Reynolds got a lot of guaranteed money as a free agent. He's a lock. Marvin Mims, obviously, looking for him to take a big next step forward. He's a lock. Troy Franklin, drafted him. Bo Nix's guy, he's a lock. So that's 4 out of a possible 6 or 7. It comes down to the predictable backups here. Like, what do the Broncos think of Tim Patrick? Like, how is he going to do in training camp in the summer? Is he going to hold up? Devon Vele, how do they view him? Do they see him as a receiver or a tight end? Then you have like the thirds here, the Brandon Johnsons, the Jalen Virgils, the Lil Jordan Humphreys, Philip Dorsett, David Sills, and Michael Bandy. I did hear a lot about Michael Bandy in minicamp, made an impression on the coaching staff. Sills and Dorsett were with the Broncos last year. I think they're expendable. Lil Jordan Humphrey, I know he's a Sean Payton guy, but I never saw starter potential with him. I'll tell you, the only 2 guys that I really did see something with were Brandon Johnson and Jalen Virgil. And Virgil had that injury he's coming back from. When he was on the field, he was explosive. He was taking the tops off of defenses and doing things that other receivers on the Broncos roster simply weren't. So I would, if he's healthy, I would tend to lean in his direction, though Brandon Johnson is another name that's just like another steady Eddie. He was developing good chemistry with Russell Wilson and thrown into a unenviable position with all the injuries the Broncos had last season. I mean, Brandon Johnson was playing starter snaps. He has no business doing that. But as like a wide receiver 4, 5, 6, 7, I'm fine with him. So it's a long-winded way for me to say I think they keep 6 or 7. It comes down to Tim Patrick versus Devon Vele and Brandon Johnson versus Jalen Virgil. Todd says we should keep 4 running backs for sure. That's what I'm thinking as well. Jody says, do we trade P. Ryan back to Cincinnati? I don't know that Cincinnati wants P. Ryan back. I mean, maybe. You can never say never. I'm not really apprised of what Cincinnati's doing with their running game. So I don't know. I just don't see what value he has either. I don't see what he brings to the table that the Bengals would flip a pick and give up capital for a guy they let walk in the first place. So, Jody, I do not see that happening. I agree that Estime is going to be very fun to watch. He's going to surprise a lot. There's some Leonard Fournette in his game that I like to see. What's up, Adam? What else we got here? Appreciate that, Roy. I appreciate all the compliments. I appreciate the stars here from Daniel. Again, it's harder without a producer for me to get to everyone and see everything, but I am doing my best, and having you guys hang out with me tonight is much appreciated. Adam says Shaw is what position coach? Shaw is going to be working in the front office alongside George Paton as a senior personnel executive, helping the Broncos scout professional and college talent. So he's not on the coaching staff, but he is working hand in hand with the GM and all the decision makers up there. All right. Irma says, thanks for being here tonight and giving us a podcast, Zach. I appreciate that, Irma. No problem. I love podcasting, love talking to y'all. And again, I wasn't going to keep you guys waiting until Sunday. Phil McLaughlin, good to see you, Phil, as always. Good evening, Zach. You show those fools you can do it alone. Thanks for holding it down the fort. Buckham, all Broncos for life, MHH for life. Thank you so much, Phil. The support you guys show me means everything. It really does. And that's why Chad was talking about that the other day. Like, sometimes we think to ourselves, like, can we, would we, should we take a day off or something comes up? We always say, no, we got to talk to you guys. We love talking to you guys genuinely. And this is the reason why, your support. It's incredible. Test Prep says, I'm here to party. That's good. Good to see you. Hope you're having a great Thursday this evening. This is another good, Keith, you have some of the best questions, not to give you, preferential treatment here, but your questions are very thought provoking. And I like, going through them. So Zach, give me your top 3 dogs on the team. We need a little attitude. Where does it come from? Man, I would love to say like the best players on the team are going to be the most vocal, like Patrick Surtain. Like I would love for him to be the Aqib Talib or the Chris Harris Jr., but it's just simply not him. It's not his style. It's not his forte. He likes going about his business the quiet way, and more power to him. One guy that jumps to mind, Keith, we've talked about it before, is Malcolm Roach, the defensive lineman formerly of the Saints. The Broncos signed him this offseason. He's going to be, if not a starter, then a primary backup on that defensive line. And everything I've heard is that he does this a lot. He gets in your face, very Derek Wolfe-like. And as I mentioned a few weeks ago when I first talked about Roach, they've needed that since Derek Wolfe has left. They haven't had those dogs. And remember what Aqib Talib said to John Elway? You fired all the dogs. Shouldn't have fired all the dogs. It's true. And that was years ago. But you look at last season, especially in Hackett's only season, there were no dogs. There were just chihuahuas barely making a squeak. And you need that edge. I'm not saying it shows up in the stat column. I'm not saying it directly leads to victories, but you need that edge. You need to show other teams like, listen, you guys might beat us, but we're going to punch you in the mouth the whole time. We're not going to make it easy. We're not going to lay down. If we go down, we're taking you with me. That's the mentality the Broncos haven't had. And that's the mentality they need to get back in a hurry. And I hope that Sean Payton's instilling that. That's kind of been his thing over the course of his career. So I'm just going up and down the roster. Like maybe Javonte can be that dog if he makes the team, but he's kind of mild-mannered too. Help me out. I mean, Troy Franklin is one that comes to mind immediately, considering what he posted on social media after the draft, like a very kind of 2 middle fingers for the rest of the NFL that passed on him. So I think Troy Franklin, Malcolm Roach, and it's really sad. That's a good one. Todd says Quinn Miners. I was going to say it's really sad that I can't think of one other player that's a dog on the team. I guess Miners would qualify, but he's a little bit of, handle your business too. I know he kind of jaws out there, but I'll throw him in for the sake of conversation because we have nobody else. But they need everyone to step up. They need less Lloyd Cushenberries and more Quinn Miners. They need less Jonathan Harrises and more Malcolm Roaches. That's another great shout by Jody and David Flores. John Franklin Myers, the defensive end the Broncos acquired from the Jets. He's a talker out there. He'll bring that workman-like dog mentality, but I can't say I've watched him too much in New York. Hopefully they need that edge. They need that alpha. They need that don't F with us mentality. Remember Defwoo? Don't even F with us? When's the last time we talked about that? When's the last time you heard that? When's the last time that was exemplified out there on the football field? Years. It has to change. All right, I'm going to grab the super from Taylor while I see it. $4.99 super. Thank you so much, Taylor. Hey, Zach, you're awesome. Appreciate you, Taylor. You're pretty awesome as well. Hey, I think Zach Wilson will be cut before the season starts. What are your opinions? Also, how about today's signing adds to the front seven? Yeah, I'm going to get to Tillman really quickly because I've written like 3 articles on him in the last week. I don't know where the Broncos view him, to be quite frank. He was reported as a defensive end. He's 6'3", 270, so he's a little heavy to play outside linebacker. He was reported as a D end when he first worked out for the team on Tuesday or yesterday. And then yesterday he was reported as an outside linebacker. It depends on the down and distance. It depends on the package the Broncos have for him. He's going to be a pass rusher. Get after the quarterback. That's the best thing he does. And didn't come from a big collegiate school. He played Division II, Indiana University at Pennsylvania, something like that. Then he played for the Spring League. He was an undrafted free agent in 2021, but he found a home in Birmingham. Tillman did in the UFL. And he's won 3 consecutive rings with that team and racked up sacks and tackles for loss and other plays along the way. So regardless of where he lines up, either D end or edge, he is going to be a factor in the team's plans, evidenced by the fact they gave him a 3-year contract. Yeah, only $10K guaranteed signing bonus, but a 3-year deal for a UFL free agent. He has a future in Denver. In terms of Zach Wilson, I agree with you, Taylor. I know you listen to the show all the time. I'm not a Zach Wilson guy. I think the Broncos are wasting their time. You have the rookie in Bo Nix. You have the veteran failsafe in Jarrett Stidham. Cut Zach Wilson and use that roster space for another receiver, another offensive lineman, another safety, cornerback. So many other utilities they can put that toward instead of a third quarterback, especially one like Zach Wilson. Good one, too. This is true. I mean, based on the tape that I watched of Estime, he seems like he has that dog, but he's still a rookie, and I don't know how dog-like rookies can be. They kind of have to pay their dues and acclimate to the NFL life, but it's a good shot as well. What else? Going through the comments here. Free Earth says Baron Browning a dog, and Todd says Baron Browning got neutered. I'm counting on a big season from Baron Browning. He's in a contract year, so he should be motivated. He's healthy. Hopefully it stays that way. And he's the Broncos' #1 edge rusher. And they have a bunch of other nice pieces around him. Cooper, Benito, Jonah Ellis. You brought in Tillman. I do think Baron Browning, if he stays healthy, could be a 10, 12, maybe even more sack kind of guy. Really excited to see what he can do this season. All right, so because it is a little slow this evening, I appreciate you, John Gino. Good job, Zach. Just wondering, what 3 games are you looking forward to the most? Okay, so can those previous comments I was going to say. Wow, there's so many on the schedule. Like the 3 that come to mind right away are all the revenge games in the first quarter of the season. I want to beat the Seahawks. I want to beat Russ in week 2, and I want to beat the Jets in week 4 or 5, whatever it is. 3, whatever it is. I really want those victories badly. And a tier down from that, I need the Broncos, not once, one time at least, beat the Raiders. Like, it's been long enough. It's ridiculous. There's no reason for it. There's no excuses this year not to. Looking forward to those games. And the Chiefs games. They took them down last season with Russell Wilson and I think a worse roster. They proved the Chiefs are beatable. Not saying the Broncos are going to win the West, but those battles with Bo Nix and a steadier offense should lead to better games and maybe even better outcomes. But the 3 that I have circled are Seattle, Pittsburgh, and Hackett's revenge game part 2. I need the Broncos to step up, man. All right. I see another one here. Mike Edel. Nice work, Zach. Appreciate you, Mike. Thank you for the super as well. Thanks for flying solo. Thank you for joining me. Hey, I have heard that all the running backs are running out the plays, except Javonte Williams. Even Samaje Perine has been. What's up there? I assume you mean like practicing on a full basis, or I don't know what else you could mean, Mike. Please clarify. But Javonte, he has that brace on his knee still, and they're being a little cautious, which I totally understand. What I don't understand, though, is that cautiousness leading some to believe that he's going to be cut before training camp or before the season. When healthy, he's still overall your best early down rusher. Estime is a rookie. I think Javonte healthy is better than Perine healthy as a rusher. So I'm not on the cut Javonte bandwagon. Now, maybe if Estime shows out as a rookie and Pirine makes the team and performs and Watson and McLaughlin contribute, maybe they flip Javonte at the trade deadline for a late round draft pick. But I'm not pressing the panic button, and I'm not buying into the narrative that he's in danger of making the team. They really want to see what Javonte looks like now, 2 years after that injury, where he should be totally unencumbered and not thinking about it and back to his old self. Because if you remember, Mike, old Javonte Williams was really, really fun to watch. Just ask the Ravens. All right. I'm going to, like I was saying before, it's a little slow this evening, and I am solo, so I'm going to keep this a little brief, this podcast tonight. I'm going to wind it down in about 10 or 15 minutes. If you guys have any questions, supers, comments, concerns, considerations, treat this like the 2-minute warning, and I'll circle back and try to get to them. This is another, not to clown on you, Free Earth. I just want to address it because we have the time tonight. This notion the Broncos should go after Alvin Kamara, flip from, give up draft picks for him, and then turn around and give him guaranteed money for an aging running back that probably is past his prime by now. When you drafted Estime, when you picked up Blake Watson, you have Pirine and Javonte. I am not in the camp that the Broncos should go after Alvin Kamara, and they would laugh in your face if you offered Javonte for Kamara straight up. You would need to throw something in there. And then again, it's not even that for me. It's not even the draft pick. It's the fact that you have to turn around and give him money. I'd rather give Javonte Williams a contract if he could stay healthy after the season than pay an aging Kamara, who, again, his best years were probably behind him. And again, if you're talking about a pass catcher, I'm not giving up a draft pick, and I'm not giving out guaranteed money at the most devalued position so a running back can catch passes. You have other running backs on the roster. They can catch passes. They can do the same things. Not saying they're going to be Alvin Kamara, but you can throw them the ball, and they will do something with it. Okay, let me just take a sip of this real quickly. My voice goes so fast when I'm solo. I don't know what that's about, but it is what it is. Okay, I'll take Phil here. Speaking of dogs, who is your all-time favorite in Broncos history? All-time favorite dog or all-time favorite Bronco player? All-time favorite dog, man. Like Shannon Sharp was the first one to come to mind because he's on the sidelines, on the phone, talking to the president, always talking his smack and performing out there on the field. I was a big fan, Phil, of the no-fly zone. And obviously because they were talented, obviously because they helped the Broncos to a championship, but their mentality, they were ripping chains off of the opposition. They were posting up with their defensive coordinator, a much older guy, and Wade Phillips, and throwing their chains on him and having fun. And it was a team. It was a brotherhood. There was a close-knit connection that started in that secondary. And the cherry on top was the fact they would just talk and jaw and get in your face and impose their will and make you fearful of the Broncos defense. And all the while going out there and backing it up. It wasn't just they were talking and then getting burned. They were going out there talking and then turning around and making Pro Bowls and all pros and winning Super Bowls. So I'm going to say Chris Harris Jr., Aqib Talib, Derek Wolfe, Shannon Sharp. You can throw Steve Atwater in there, the silent assassin, although, it's in his name, silent. I don't know if he qualifies as a dog, but those are the Mount Rushmore to me. And hopefully some of the new additions the Broncos brought in could be the future of that Rushmore. All right. What else? I think the chat is slowing down. Again, guys, we're at about 34 minutes. I'm going to wind it down in a minute. If, you guys could say, how'd you forget Von Miller? That's kind of an easy choice because Von's so good. And he was such a likable guy off the field, though. He wasn't this villain that you hated if you were playing against him. You realized how good he was, and you were frustrated when he beat you, but you always liked him after the fact. He wasn't Travis Kelce, as a kind of an unlikable guy, at least, in his Broncos prime years. All right, I'll take this from Todd. How about bringing in Yannick Ngakoue? Todd, I feel about Ngakoue the same as I do a lot of others, these veteran free agents, maybe with the exception of a center. I would prefer the young guys get the work. I prefer the young guys get the reps. I prefer the Broncos to see what they have in their current players and then go from there. I like for them to build up their own stable instead of constantly every year purchasing sloppy seconds. They drafted Henningsen. You have Elijah Garcia, who looked really good. You brought in Tillman. There's a lot of players that I want to see develop that I don't want to be stuck behind an aging veteran that's probably only going to come here for a payday. So Ngakoue was a great player in Jacksonville. I don't want him in Denver. They have no need for an older player in a year that's probably going to be an evaluation and a developmental period. So if it's developmental and evaluation, I want to develop the younger guys and evaluate what they can do for the future. All right. Let me make sure I didn't miss any supers. I did not. Hopefully I didn't miss any stars. Any stars I did miss or any comments like that, we'll make up for you Sunday when we have Chad and Scott back in the building. I want to grab Raul here. What do you need to see out of the quarterbacks in the preseason to feel like we will make the playoffs this season? I take nothing, Raul, out of the preseason. In fact, the only thing I want to see in the preseason is no injuries. That's the only thing I care about when it comes to those 3 games is no injuries. Everyone stays healthy, especially number 10, and I'd be happy. It's so hard to evaluate because it's JV and varsity going from preseason to the regular season. There's so many players that have looked good in the summer that have bombed in the fall. Too many to name. So that's why I'm going to reserve my judgment. Even if Bo Nix looks fantastic, CJ Stroud did not look good in the preseason in 2023. How did that turn out? So even if Bo Nix looks fantastic, I am reserving judgment until week 1 and as the season goes on. I personally have been burned too many times with false hope and going all in on a quarterback and declaring playoffs and this and that. It's happened the last 2 years, and last season especially was very eye-opening for me. I am not going to put myself out there on that limb again. Just no injuries this preseason. Everyone develops along their own plan, and we'll make an evaluation when the regular season starts. Though, I'll say this about the quarterbacks, not the playoffs, but I want to see separation when possible, where possible, from Bo Nix. I don't want to see a close competition heading into the 3rd preseason game. I don't want the Broncos to still have a decision to make by the 3rd preseason game. I want the decision to be over with, and the other 2 games or game or whatever is a formality. So if we're looking for anything here, Raul, in the preseason, it's separation from Bo Nix. I mean, significant, noticeable separation in that quarterback room. Roger Cooper says, I saw an Instagram post where they rated each team's personal. Roger, you're going to have to explain what you meant there. I don't know if you're talking about a grade that they gave the Broncos or what. So clarify what you meant, and I'll try to get back to you. Danny Garcia, good question here. Really good question. Who has more yards this season, Mims or Franklin? Wow. On one hand, I want to say Marvin Mims. I mean, you can make the case for both, right? Like Marvin Mims is going to see probably a starting role. Hopefully, I want to see him step into that, the number 2 behind Sutton. But then again, Franklin has that freaking connection with Bo Nix. You turn on a Bo Nix highlight tape on YouTube, like 90% of the highlights are touchdown throws to Troy Franklin. I don't know. I'm going to say Marvin Mims only because of sheer volume, Daniel. He's going to step into that number 2 role. We don't really see that yet for Troy Franklin, though. I think Franklin's future, his arrow is pointing sky high. Same for Marvin Mims. But then again, this is the devil and the angel. Mims had his warts as a rookie. He fumbled a little bit and got in the doghouse on offense. Great kick returner, special teamer, but he has to take that step forward and justify that 2nd-round draft value. I'm going to say Marvin Mims, though. Don't sleep on Troy Franklin. We can look back maybe 3 years from now, and we're going to say, wow, the Broncos got a steal. How did that guy go in the 4th round? How did they get him there? That's what Troy Franklin could be. All right. These are a lot of questions about, better this, better that, Russ versus Bo Nix. I'm talked out on Russ. It's been a long couple years. So I think I'm going to wind it down. I'll get this from Denise Books. Hey, Zach, do you think Stidham will still be a Bronco when the season starts? Yes. I mean, my opinion, could be wrong. If I had to put money on it right now, I would say the Broncos will keep 2 quarterbacks on the 53, 55, whatever it is nowadays. Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham. You might have Zach Wilson hanging around on the practice squad, but I don't see the point. And I do think Stidham, considering the offseason he had, very just on the money. Did nothing really overly well, but did nothing bad either. Did nothing make you to think that he shouldn't be the starter. But yeah, to answer your question, I do think he'll make the team and he'll be the number 2 behind Bo Nix. But you never know. Maybe there's something to this Jarrett Stidham QB1 conspiracy, this narrative. We shall find out in training camp. I think that's going to do it, though, guys. I'm pretty sure I got everyone. It's been about 40 minutes. It's what I wanted to go tonight. So with that said, I'm going to get to my messages for this evening. Another tremendous installment of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle. You can follow me on Twitter at Kelberman NFL. You can follow Chad at Chad N. Jensen and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every podcast, check out mhhmerch.com and get you some. If you haven't dropped us a like yet, please do so at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, this is paramount importance. Please, 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 y'all, subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you. All right. I think that's going to do it for me this evening. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you from the supers, or for the supers, David, Sam, Gary. I'm going to get to Gary in a second. I see that I didn't address that. Taylor and Mike Edel. This is what Gary had to say. I think Wilson was a Sia in case they didn't draft. Maybe, but I think Wilson should be a Sia now, because you drafted Bo Nix and you have the veteran failsafe who you personally handpicked and signed in Jarrett Stidham. So maybe it was a contingency plan, but the contingency is over now. So let's get on with it. But that was another great installment. This is true. I just can't stop answering questions. MBLX test prep. Zach, what is your favorite Aqib Talib moment, and why is it him snatching Crabtree's chain? That's a tongue twister. I have 2. You name one. Keep the Crabtree. I mean, twice. He came after him twice. No one talks about the second time, but he was trolling him IRL. I freaking love it. Wow, we have a big super coming up too. The other favorite moment is what I mentioned earlier, is when in the locker room they put the chains on Wade Phillips and they started partying with him and making him kind of a gangster. So I love to see stuff like that. And I love to see again how close and how tight and how it was like a brotherhood back then. And you see why they had the success they did and the chemistry they did on defense. That's so cool. You iron sharpens iron. Thank you so much. He says, can't let you go without a super. Is that Dale? Is that D-Dub? Forgive me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that's D-Dub, but regardless, iron sharpens iron. Thank you so much. $50 super. That is incredible. Incredible. Big Zach holding it down for the faithful. Nice beard you got blooming there. It's going soon. I saw a comment about that on YouTube too. Like, nice beard, Zach. You should keep it. I like growing it out until it gets to a point where it gets in my mouth and in my ears and my nose. It's too itchy, too annoying. So enjoy it while it's here, I guess. What do you think about the improvements on the D-line? Personally, I think it's sneakily improved. I don't think it's so sneakily iron. And it is D-Dub. Thank you so much, Dale. You know how much I love you, bro, how much I appreciate you. Thank you. And it's good to see you as always. They made it a point. I mean, George Paton said himself after the season, the run defense was not good enough. And it's hard to get that blunt of an answer out of George Paton, but it just shows you how bad the run defense was. They went out, they signed Malcolm Roach, you traded for John Franklin Myers. You've made a lot of improvements to this roster, and it's night and day. It's night and day. Just addition by subtraction was letting Jonathan Harris go. He had no business starting for Denver. And then you put in John Franklin Myers there, a player, 3 times his capability as a starter. Boom, instant upgrade. I mean, even the depth. Henningsen, you brought in Angelo Blackson, Malcolm Roach, who I talked about, who could start at nose tackle if DJ Jones weren't around. Jordan Jackson, who they were high on last season. Elijah Garcia, who had a great preseason last year. So suddenly the D-line went from Jonah Ellis is an outside linebacker, not a D lineman. Todd, so that's what I'm talking about. It went from being very shallow at starter and at backup, the D line, and now it went from being pretty solid at starter and backup. You have the veteran players, you have a nice mix of younger players, developmental guys. So I agree that it's big improvements, but I don't think it was sneaky. I think they made it a mission publicly and they went out and did it. Mission accomplished. I think it's the most improved area of the team. And you can make the case incredibly. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe receiver is the only other position. It might be the deepest positional group on the Broncos, defensive line. What am I forgetting here? Maybe with the exception of receiver, maybe running back. But though, that's a lot of ifs in that group. D-line is up there, though, and it's crazy to think that. It's crazy to say that, considering how bad they were last season. But again, thank you so much, Dale, for that generous contribution. We appreciate it, and it's always good to see you, hear from you. All right, that is going to do it for me. Yeah, William, I think, again, I can't stop answering questions. I love doing this with y'all. Purcell is a free agent, and I think he is. I'm pretty sure he is, and he wanted to come back to Denver. It's looking like that ship has sailed, so that was that with him. But that's going to do it for me this evening. Have a great rest of your Thursday. We are all back in the saddle. I've been talking for too long now. All back in the saddle Sunday night. Me and Chad and Scott on the 1s and 2s. We will see you then. Have a great start to your weekend. Take care, and as always, go Broncos.